In today's session, I'd like to take you through a little look at the HIVE software and some of the features that we have on offer. To access the interface of your HIVE player is really easy. Simply open up a browser on any computer, a Mac, a PC, or a tablet, just like I have here, and type in the IP address of your player. In this case, it's 192.168.0.100. And you'll be presented with this homepage. We call this the device page, and it's from here that you can access all the rest of the features of the system. On the left-hand side at the top, it shows you the IP address of your device, and then below that, some information that can be quite useful. The name of your player, the general status, if everything's running okay, and the resolution that you're running at, along with the number of files you've got on the system and how much space you've got left on your hard disk. In the center is a live preview of the output of your system. Below that, you can choose the quality that this preview is running at, or if required, to save bandwidth on network, you can disable it completely. I'm just going to leave it at low quality so that we do have a preview running. In the top right-hand corner, we have a blackout button. If you hit this, your output will go to black. The preview will continue to run, but the output will go black. And then along the bottom of the screen, you have the navigation bar. This allows you to go to the different pages, each of which categorizes a different type of setting or setup that you can do on your system. I'm going to take you through each one of these now so that we can see clearly how easy it is to work through a HIVE system. One of the things that differentiates a HIVE player from simple players is the ability to map our video output. So one of the first pages that we can go to is the map page. On here, we can adjust our output to match our screen or our projectors or any other display device that we have. We have a number of options for this. The first one is our simple mapping. And as you can see here on the preview, we have some arrows. I can just grab the arrows, move them to wherever I want to, and then I can take the whole thing and move that to any area of the screen. And as a result, we can map our picture to any part of the output that we want to. This is ideal if you're working with LED walls that simply need the picture to be scaled and positioned at a certain part of the screen. We have the option here to do fill output area, which is effectively resetting the system or the mapping back to its default state. Something that's important to understand here is that by default, the system will respect the aspect ratio of the content. So if I try and shrink the image down to small here, you'll see that it puts a black border at the top and bottom so that we don't end up stretching the image. We can change this way of working in the top left by changing the image framing to stretch. And then it will be stretched, but this will affect the aspect ratio of your content, which is why letterbox, which is what we had before, is the default option. I'm just going to reset that output again. And then we can go to the next tab along the top, the advanced warping page. So on here, we have the concept of regions. On the left-hand side, we have our source or our canvas. So this would be the same resolution as the media we're playing. And on the right-hand side, we have the output of this device. And then we can create regions that map from any area of the source to any area of our output. By default, when you set up your system for the first time, it will create a region for you, region 1, which maps the whole of the content to the whole of the output. But I can at any point go up to the command and add a new region. Here we have region number 2, and I'm sampling the top left-hand corner, and I'm going to output it in the bottom right-hand corner. And I can continue by adding another region and placing this where I want on the output. You can add as many regions as you want to, and this is really useful when you're working with LED screens and you need to remap tiles. You can actually have a region for every tile in your LED wall. This means that you can create the layout as it is in the real life, on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, represent it the way that your LED processor wants to see it. Again, I'm going to go back to here to reset the output. One of the interesting things about regions is they can be set to be one of many different types. Currently, this region is a rectangular region. But in here, I can change it to be a 4-point warp. This is a keystone warp. So if you're working with projectors and this Hive player was driving a projector, you can now use these nodes to adjust and warp the output to correct for projecting at an angle or projecting on a wall that is not 100% flat. Once again, I'll reset. And we can see that there are some other options for a region. One of the more common ones is a warp grid. When I create a warp grid, I have some extra options up at the top here. I can choose how many rows or columns I want to add for adjustment. And also if I want to add any subdivisions. I'm just going to add 10 subdivisions there. And now we can move the points and we can warp our content in a far more complex way. This can be used to warp around curved surfaces, around architectural abnormalities, or any other type of non-flat surface that you want to correct for. There's also the ability in here to add blending, and this can be done either by manually moving the blending point or by typing in a blend percentage up at the top. And we can also adjust the gamma, which adjusts the type of blend that we have. This allows you to create multiple outputs that are blended together if you're using projectors on a single space. Once again, I will go back and reset. The other thing about regions is that they can have their source changed. By default, all regions will be added with their source set to layer mix. On a Hive player, we have 2 media layers. And so by default, what you can see in a region is the mix of those 2 layers, or the output of those 2 layers combined. However, if we highlight a region, in this case I've highlighted the new region, region 2, we can set its source to be either layer 1 or layer 2, or we can actually set it to a media player layer. And then I can choose a file. This will now be rendered inside that region. It's important to note that when you create a media region, it does not use any of your standard media layers. So you still have your 2 media layers in the background and you're able to mix those as you did before. This is an additional player that has got very simple controls. You can change what's playing in it and you can turn it on or off, but you can't do anything else to a media region other than physically move it to a place. But this is really useful for overlays or logos or live inputs, picture-in-picture, for example, or a ticker down the bottom of the screen, that sort of thing. Okay, I'm just going to reset that one more time. So as you can see, we have a lot of options for warping our image, scaling, positioning, arranging tiles, and also warping around non-flat surfaces. But we can also take a region and we can use it as a mask. We can do a 4-point mask, or we can do a full warp mask. When we do a full warp mask, we can add multiple points, and then we can move those points around so that we can mask around a more complex shape. So warping, masking, creating media regions, overlaying and reassigning your tiles of an LED screen is all possible on the advanced page in the mapping. There is a third tab called Warp and Blend, and this is where we're able to interface to other third-party software, in this case Viozo, Screenbuoy, or we're also compatible with projection tools from Dome Projection. Those three softwares can be used externally to do very complex automated warping, for example, using cameras to auto-align multiple projectors. And then the result of that software can be loaded into your HIVE player, and then the Viozo software or Screenbuoy software can be taken away. This is used for much more complex installations where you have a lot of projectors. The next tab on the navigation bar is the Media tab. This will take you to our content management system, where you can deal with uploading media, managing your media, and also accessing live input controls and external sources. By default, the system has one media folder. You can, however, create as many additional media folders as you want to. We go up here, I can click Add Folder, I can give it a name, and the new folder will be created, and clicking on it will allow me to switch into it. Currently, there is only one file in my new folder, black, because black needs to be in every folder, but I could now upload media files in here if I wanted to. If I go back to my main media folder, uploading files is very simple, just simply clicking on the Upload Media Files button, and it will take you to a browser, and you can browse your computer or your tablet for the file you want to upload. In this case, I have a screenshot, and it will upload it, and it will give you the progress as it's doing. So you'll see that it's uploaded it down there. From this page, you can also instantly change what the device is playing. If you just hit the play button on any file, so if I hit here, it will play this file, here, this one, and so on. It's worth noting at this point the codec for video. By default, HIVE requires its files to be converted to HEVC format or H.265. This is the most common format for use in HIVE because we have a hardware decoder that makes it possible to decode and play back large resolutions at high frame rates. We do also support Notch LC, and this is especially useful when you have alpha channels in your videos. In addition, we support JPEGs and PNG images. If you upload your file and everything is okay, then you will get a green status dot next to your file. If there is anything wrong with the file, but it will still play, you will get an orange dot, and a red dot indicates that the file is not able to be played for one reason or another. Usually the system will not allow you to upload a file if it is in the wrong format. Down at the bottom, you also have the option to add test cards or templates of various resolutions. We have the ability to add a live input, for example, an NDI feed, or a live input through a USB capture device that is connected in the front. We also have the ability to create a watch folder on the system and use that as a media source. When a new file is put into that folder, it will automatically be displayed wherever we're playing that new media source. The Choose URL button allows us to display web pages. Now, these web pages can be live if we have access to the internet, or they can be on the hard drive of your player, so we can run HTML5 apps or web pages direct from a local drive. This is useful for creating interactive menus or kiosk displays for museums, for example. There are also some more options. Every line or every entry in the line has a command button with the ability to move the item up or down in the list, delete it, rename it, replace it with a new version, or swap it with another file in the list. It's also possible to select multiple files and do those actions to all of the selected items. You can download files that you have already uploaded, for example, if you needed to upload them to another player. And we have the ability to log the playback of files. Very useful if you're working with advertising and people need a proof of play. This system will log what files are played, where they're played, how many times they're looped for, and it will allow you to export this to an Excel spreadsheet that you can then provide to anyone who requires it. In addition to this, we have a list command, and this allows us to refresh the list, completely renumber it, or completely clear it and start again. You'll notice that each of the files on the left-hand side has a number at the beginning. This is added whenever you upload a file, and this is used if you're trying to access the file from an external device. For example, if you are controlling the system by UDP, you would send a command to say load file 17. You wouldn't need to have to type in the whole name. The next page on the navigation bar is the play page. If we go to the play page, this is where we can program the system to automatically run sequences or to listen to external timecode. The simplest way of programming a Hive player is using the playlist, which is the first tab. Here we have some buttons for manipulating the playlist, and one of those is the add button. By pressing the add button, I get a list of all the media on my system, and I can select as many of these as I want to. These files will get added to the playlist in the order that I've clicked on them. You will see the list in a list format down the bottom, but up at the top, it also creates a timeline style version of that playlist. To enable the playlist, we just turn it on at the top, and I can then navigate or jump around the playlist by hitting the play buttons on each row. I can also do the same by clicking anywhere in the timeline further up, and it will jump to that exact place. If I want to, I can add a crossfade. Here I will add a 1 second crossfade. And now it will crossfade from one look to the other in the playlist, nice and smoothly. This is a very quick and very easy way of creating a show. Or, for example, if you wanted to create a slideshow, you could add an entire media folder and just have all your files in one custom folder. You have the options to use layer 1 or layer 2 as your playback. And we also have the ability to add markers. Markers are an advanced feature, but they allow you to make things happen at certain points in the playlist. And even though the playlist is very simple, it can do some very clever things. I'll just stop it now. You'll see that at the end of each row, there is a follow-on action. By default, this is set to play the next one in the list. However, there are all sorts of options you can put in here. You can make it play a random one in the list, jump to the first, jump to a certain place, wait a few seconds and then go to the next one, etc., etc. This allows you to create some pretty complex logic and subroutines inside your main playlist. This is very useful when used with external control, so that, for example, when a person presses a button, it can play a little routine and then jump back to another routine for attracting the next person to the display. The next section is the timecode playlist. Very similar to the standard playlist, but here, when we add files, it allows you to add a timecode to those files. We can then bring timecode in from an external source, and we can bring it in using MIDI timecode, ArtNet, or we can even use the internal clock. When we have timecode coming in, if the timecode playlist is enabled, it will then sit and wait for timecode, and as soon as it sees the appropriate timecode, for example, if it sees a timecode of 3 hours here, it will start playing the cola clip. This allows you to create an entirely automated show that follows an audio track and timecodes and locks perfectly. The next one is Live Control. Live Control allows you to create custom control pages to do whatever you want. Let's say here, I'll go to page 7. We have a total of 16 pages, as you can see. So I'm going to go to page 7, which is empty. I can go into an edit mode, and now I can add a button. I could add a knob. I could also add an image. So on here, we can design a control screen of any type you want to. We can put background images, logos, and then for all of these buttons and controls, we can go in and we can adjust properties of them. Here, for example, I might say that this is going to be 3 wide and 2 deep. And I'm going to say that I want this to be a media trigger for this file. And it will automatically put a picture in there. And by clicking that button, it will start playing that file on the output. This fader, if I wanted to, I can make this the intensity. It's actually already the intensity, but I could, for example, make this a scale adjuster so that it adjusts the size of the video. And then when I go back to the command section and go to operate controls, I can click these buttons and operate them. For example, if I click this one here, you'll see that the output will start playing that file. But this and all 16 of these pages are then available externally. You can type in an IP address. And then if we just go $live page equals and the number of the page, in my case it was 7, it brings you to here, where I can click and I get a full screen version of my output. And you'll see here that I can adjust the scale, and clicking that file will play the file, although that file's actually already playing. And you can create up to 16 of these pages, and they will all be available as web pages on your network. So they can be used for controlling the system. They can be used for monitoring the current state of the system or what's happening. Then we have the timeline. The timeline is a keyframeable timeline. It allows us to add files. And then, if required, we can then keyframe certain parameters by adjusting the levels. And we can make sequences that can be reused. These timelines can then be added to the media list. Like so. And then they can be used as if they were just media. The advantage of using this method is that once I play it, I can go back to the timeline and I can edit it if I want to make any changes. This means that we can have any number of timelines in the system because they're basically just saved like media. And then finally on the play page, we have the scheduler. So the scheduler is basically like a calendar where the day is split into sections. At the moment, it's looking at every minute, but I can change this to look at every hour. For example, on here, I could have at 7 o'clock in the morning, I could say I want to start playing a playlist. And then at 6 o'clock at night, I want to go black. And then here I can choose to repeat that option multiple days. And if required, I could say that I only wanted it to happen between certain dates. This allows you to pre-create things that will happen at certain times, have something different happen a weekend, for example, and so on. And then just by hitting Use Schedule, that is now active and running. The next page on our navigation bar is the Adjust page. The Adjust page allows us to access the settings and any adjustable parameters of the system. So the first tab is our General Settings page. Here we can access things like the video output settings, the audio output settings, and important settings like the B type. It's probably a good point to explain the concept of queen bees and worker bees. If you are using a lot of projectors or a large number of displays, then you can use multiple Hive players and configure them to work as if they were one device. To do this, you set one of the devices to be a queen bee. You see here the setting of B type. On the other devices that are part of the same canvas, you set them to be worker bees. Once you do this, the worker bees will find the queen bees and a number of things will happen. First of all the video playback will be synchronized so that they all play exactly the same frame of video at the same time. The HDMI ports will all gen-lock using a system called B-Sync. This means that on LED walls and projectors that are overlapped, that you won't see any tearing. And then all commands, such as blackout or play this file or go to 0 level, will all happen at exactly the same time on all devices, because all commands will be synchronized. So here is where we would set whether we are a queen or a worker. It's also where we would set the IP address of the queen if we knew it. And then we would use the ArtNet universe to decide which queen worker group we are part of. It's possible to have multiple queens on one network and multiple sets of workers following those queens. Each queen and its workers is called a queen worker group, and we use the ArtNet universe as the number of that group. We also have the options down here to set up B-Sync and to make sure that B-Sync is working correctly, and a number of other useful settings for other things. The second tab up here is the Parameters tab. And in here, we see all of the adjustable parameters on each layer. The ones you're looking at the moment are purely for layer 1. And if I select here layer 2, you're now looking at the parameters for layer 2. These are very similar to the parameters found on much larger and more complex media servers. So you do have a lot of options here. One of the exceptional features on a layer is the ability to apply a lookup table. This is great if you're working in films or you want to give your output a very filmic look, or if you need to match a certain set of colors. Over here in the Effects tab, each one of our layers has 2 effects engines. Here you can choose which effect to apply, for example, sepia, and how much of that effect you want to apply. Some of the effects have more than one parameter, for example, kaleidoscope. Here you can turn up the effect, but you also have the ability to adjust divisions, rotations, zoom, etc. The last page in the interface is the Connect page. And the Connect page is where we deal with the outside world. There are 3 tabs at the top. I'm going to jump over to Sensors first. So Hive is compatible with the full range of fidget sensors. You can see these on the website at fidget.com. And they make a complete collection of sensors of different types. Everything from simple button presses, faders, pressure sensors, weight sensors, sensors for detecting the presence of a person, RFID sensors for detecting objects, and all sorts of other sensors as well. You can detect, or you can connect your sensors direct to your Hive system. And then in here, you would set how many sensors you were using, what type of sensor it was, or which category it's from. And then you'd be able to read the value coming in from your sensor, do some processing on that value, and then choose to use it to affect a parameter or choose a file or do something in your system. The Cloud tab is for Hive Cloud. Hive Cloud allows you to access the interface of your device or multiple devices over the internet so that you can access it anywhere in the world. To do that, you need to go to hivecloud.run and create an account with an email address. When you do that, you'll be presented with a key. And if you copy that key and place it here, where it says Hive Cloud Key, put your email address that you registered your account with at the top, and then switch to Enabled. You will see your device appearing in Hive Cloud. From there, you can access the entire interface that I've just been showing you, including the ability to upload media, program your playlists, and modify any existing timelines or queues. Then we have the data flow page. The data flow page allows you to create flowcharts that run from the top to the bottom, that allows you to add events and actions and some conditions to create more complex actions. This is a more advanced feature of Hive, but I can show you some very simple examples. If, for example, we wanted to send a message to turn on a projector every time we turned on our Hive player. On the right-hand side here, you can see that I have an event. So here I'm going to add the on startup event. This is fired every time the system boots up and starts running. I can then add conditions if I needed them. In this case, I don't. And down at the bottom, I can go down to actions. In this case, I'm going to go to send UDP message. And I can decide what the message is. I'm going to send a message of projector on. I'm going to send it to 192.168.110 on port 8088. So now, as long as this flowchart 1 is enabled, as it is, as soon as I switch my system on and it has booted up, it will send projector on over UDP to this IP address. Of course, you can do other things. If I clear those, I could add a timer event. And I could say, I want you to output seconds. You'll see if I zoom in here that every second or every 1000 milliseconds, we're getting a trigger. And it's also outputting the number in seconds since we started the flowchart. This is where it's useful for me to use a condition. If I add a condition, I can say if input equals 40, then I want you to output hello. If it's not, I want you to output goodbye. And you'll see if we look down here, it's generally saying goodbye. However, if we left it long enough and this got up to 40, it would say hello. And then when it got to 41, it would say goodbye. I could then, for example, send that output via UDP or via OSC to some external device. So flowcharts can be used for a number of things. They can be used to trigger devices outside of your Hive player. They can be used to read sensors and act in certain ways, for example, jumping around a playlist, depending on which button was pressed, that sort of thing. So it's a way of creating a simple logic system and then being able to act on the various events and conditions that you set. From the device page, you can also go to the network search page. You access this by clicking on the B in the top left-hand corner. By default, it should try and search the network that your device is already set to be on, and it will come up with a list of all of the devices that it finds. You can see here that my player is up at the top. It gives me some information about its name, its IP address, and which version of software it's running. And then below there, we can see 3 more devices. These are devices that happen to be on the same network as our demo system. From here, we can look at the media that is on our system and what its general settings are. I can click on the Identify button, and you will get a bar appearing on the output that gives you some information about your player. If I want to, I can choose to filter only certain devices. So if I only want to see my device, I could say, only show me between 99 and 110. And if I press refresh devices, now it will only find my device because that's the only one that comes within that range. There's a list of commands here that you can action onto all of the devices. This is really useful. It allows you to restart all your devices, to refresh information from them all. Or if you have a new version of software, you can update them all remotely from this page. So this allows you to update hundreds of devices if required with the latest software just from one connection here. From here, we can go to a thing called the radial map. Now, the radial map is a visual representation of your network. It shows you your device, which is listed here, the computer that you're working from, and the relation of the player to that. So here we see the IP address of the player. Next to that, we see all the settings. And after that, we have the media list, which is expanded here. I only have one device here, but if we had multiple devices, you would see them all represented as different sections. If they were working as part of a Queen worker group, then all the devices in the same group would be in the same circle. Each circle would represent a separate Queen worker group. You can see here that when I hover over a device, it highlights in a color. If we had multiple devices, they would all highlight. And if they were highlighting in the same color, it means the value is the same. If they highlight in a different color, it means that they have a different value. This can be used to instantly check if you have the right media on all machines or if the settings are correct across all devices. From this screen, it's also possible to go to our clone and backup. And this is especially useful on large systems where we have a lot of devices. From here, we can clone devices from another device. We can save a copy of a device, including all its media, to a backup storage path, something like a NAS. And we can restore an existing backup that we've created back to a device, for example, if we wanted to replace a device in our network. And then lastly, from any device here, you can press the Open button, and this will take you into the device's full page. So that was a brief overview of the software and the Hive interface. If you'd like any more detail, or if you'd like a demo, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.